Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 162, and today's episode is a spotlight on Coup, which is the third and final full-length album to be released under the Plasmatics name, before of course having it changed, which I'll get into a little later into this video. Now, if you are at least familiar with Plasmatics and then you'll know that this is the band that pretty much introduced the world to, of course, the late female singer Wendy O. Williams, which I'll get to a little bit of her, I guess, end story around the end of the video. Or at least around just close to the end of the video. So, up to this point, again, Plasmatics were just known as a very ruckus, very raunchy punk rock band. But prior to, with this album and then after this album, this would really kind of change the overall direction in terms of sound. And, So, I'm just going to get into at least the background here and just read through, of course, Wikipedia's page here. Again, in 1982, a deal was signed with Capitol Records, and Dan Hartman offered to produce a demo of the album for Capitol with Rod Swenson at Electric Lady Studios, which again was Jimi Hendrix's old studio in New York. A demo was arranged, recorded, and mixed within a week, but not released. It would, of course, be released 20 years later as Coup de Grace, or Coup de Gras, whatever. So, instead, I think that's where I'm going to go to this part of the page, the Coup de Grace page, because it has at least some more information about this overall recording of Coup de Da. So, of course, again, says during the spring of 1982, the Plasmatics were signed to, of course, again, Capitol Records. Dan Hartman offered, whatever. Yeah, so it was mixed within a week. Again, I'm just trying to speed through it so I don't repeat some of the words or the story here. Again, recorded and mixed within a week. Dieter Dierks, a famous German producer, best known for producing the Scorpions albums from at least In Trance to Savage Amusement, who had just come off a number one album with Scorpions, that being, of course, Blackout, which I already covered on this channel. And that was, I think, what the previous episode, which is pretty coincidental. Also expressed interest in producing. Dan Hartman was soon replaced by Dieter. And so that's where we come to, of course, Coup d'Eat, which then the album, I guess the re-recording of the album was then transferred all the way to Dierks Studios in Kulim. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In Germany, again, it's Dieter Dierks' own studio, and that's basically where we get the final product. That being Coup d'Eat, with Michael Wagner, again, another famous producer, best known for doing stuff for like Accept, Ozzy, Skid Row, Dokken, even like other obscure bands like Faithful Breath and Hazard and everything. Just done a whole lot of production work. So he's assigned, and again, George Marino as the masterer. So that would be, of course, after the recording, it'd be taken back to, of course, his facility in New York. So that pretty much leads us with Coup d'Eat, or Coup de Da. Again, a little minor screw up there. But I backtracked myself there. So that leaves us with the album here, which again, released sometime in 1982. It's not really specified what month or day that it was released in 1982, but it had to have been somewhat after, at least, Blackout. But right now, because there's no definitive date, I'm doing it at least pretty early here in 2022. So that means this album has already reached its 40th anniversary. So again, it's one of the main reasons why I want to really cover this album is because it's, 40 years old. So let's definitely look at the track listing. Since it was released through Capitol, we're all given at least 10 songs, minus one other song, that being Uniformed Guards, which really, I guess, might have been recorded twice for all I know. But still, whatever is left over of the song 2 is on the Coup de Grace album as well, which again is the demo or the original first recording of Coup de Da. So let's definitely read out these 10 songs here. Again, we have Put Your Love in Me, Stop, Rock and Roll, which is not a cover of any other song that any artist has recorded. I mean, well, let's say Led Zeppelin or Lou Reed. Then, of course, we get to Lightning Breaks. Then, of course, a cover of Motorhead's No Class, Mistress of Taboo, Country Fairs, Path of Glory, Just Like on TV, and then finally, The Damned, which then would be later covered by Destruction. Again, for those who probably know, German thrash metal band. So there we go. Now, this, like I've stated, even though Plasmatics were more of a punk rock band, this is the album that pretty much would transition Plasmatics, especially the late Wendy O. Williams, from being a punk rocker to basically a full-fledged metal singer. Because this album was the big foray into, of course, the whole heavy metal and hard rock terrain. And with, of course, Dieter Dierks and Michael Wagner all on board, they really give the album and the overall band a much more gnarly, more metal, more ruckus sound than before. I mean, there's still a little bit of that punk snarl and attitude on this album, but everything else, just due to the production, everything, it just sounds a lot more, metallic sounding. I mean, it definitely has its fair share, like Tank and Motorhead, very influences. I mean, the cover of No Class, I think, speaks for itself, but there's just a lot more of a metal edge to this album that I think would really, which Wendy Williams would continue on with their solo stuff after this one. So this was the transitional album. And again, Dieter Dierks just gives the band a much more heavier boost. Again, just from at least songs like Put Your Love in Me, Stop, the song Rock and Roll, Lightning Breaks, which again is probably more close, has a bit of a Black Sabbath kind of feel to this song. Then, of course, Mistress of Taboo, Country Fairs, Path of Glory, and Just Like on TV and The Damned. These are just more metal. It's very less punk, and just, again, it's more metal because of, again, there's more of a structure as well to these songs. They're not like completely, full speed ahead and just very chaotic. Just basically to kind of describe the first two Plasmatics albums. Just this one is a lot more musical. There's definitely more structuring to it. It still has its snarly bite to it, but everything just at least has a much more refined tune to at least to the songs. The structuring is just more edged out. Everything just sounds like that they were kind of putting some effort into really making this one I guess in a way this might have been considered a commercial attempt, but at the same time, when you have at least songs like Lightning Breaks and Mistress of Taboo, Country Fairs, Path of Glory, and The Damned, these are less kind of commercial and just still are more like, I can't really see any sort of radio at least trying to play some of the songs. Like, this is probably some of the heaviest stuff I would say you would at least get this year in 1982. That isn't at least, Venom or Merciful Fate. but this at least has a lot more of a heavier bite to at least everything. And again, Wendy Williams just comes off across even more snarlier and more aggressive, and just a lot more obnoxious sounding at times too, in all the best ways. She is just on fire with this album, and everyone else is. The leads and everything, and just the performance. Oh, what these guys were trying to conquer the world. I mean, coup d'etat is basically French for rebellion, and that's, I think, is the best term to really describe the Plasmatics sound in general, especially this album, is that it's pure rebellious, snarling heavy metal in the best way. Again, very much that Motorhead aesthetic to the sound and everything. Is just I think what they made here, personally to me, is probably easily one of their best albums by far. Probably Wendy Williams' best album, in my opinion. This is really their crowning achievement as a band. It takes a sort of early sort of punk sound, but combines it with the more metallic attack or even just the more snarling attack of like bands like the new wave of British heavy metal of Motorhead and Tank. Even at times maybe it's a little bit of an AC/DC kind of flair here and there. You know, this is really kind of combining it with those kind of bands, and it just really creates something much more refined. And it's just, again, a really great album from beginning. I mean, I really do love songs like Put Your Love in Me, Lightning Breaks, Stop. Mistress of Taboo is also one of my personal favorites off of this album. Path of Glory, and of course The Damned are all freaking great songs. Really, it's just a really great, well-rounded metal album from beginning to end, and easily is probably some of the best albums from this year, in my opinion. I think it definitely deserves a lot of credit for what it is. Again, I mean, from here, I mean, Coup d'etat was considered a breakthrough album that began to blend, again, the punk and heavy metal genres, something that would later be done by, even though they say SOD and Anthrax, but the difference is that Plasmatics don't come across as like their typical, crossover, sounding thrash metal band, because those bands kind of took more of the punk, but gave it even more of the thrashier edge. Whereas Plasmatics on here basically took more of the punk sound, but combined it with something more like the new wave or British heavy metal. So it's got more of a traditional metal sound to it, but again, it just has that sort of punk attitude to it that is pretty much heard throughout the entire album, and I think is what gives the album its extra boost and its character, and whatever is great about the sound, it gives it, and is able to kind of make itself stand out apart from the pack that was being released in the year of 1982. I mean, that's why in some ways you can almost say that 1982 was a breakthrough year in metal music or rock music. Like, this was easily the year that was pretty much, you were seeing a lot of bands kind of come up with some of their most breakthrough albums, or even albums that would be considered quintessential, very influential. This was the year that was really transitioning everything. It's like what you would, 1980 in a way pretty much was the year that people say, heavy metal exploded in 1980, especially with the whole burgeoning new wave or British heavy metal movement. But there was still a little bit of that sort of 70s kind of flair going on with at least the sound in some of the albums in 1980, whereas in 1982, things were starting to break out a bit more. It's like, this is where at least you can feel the sort of real 80s metal starting to really kind of be heard in all the albums in 1982. That's why this was easily the premier year for metal in a way. It's like everything was coming together. Things were coming into place, the sound and everything. This was where everything was pretty much the most developed year for metal. And I think an album like Coup d'etat, I think really just adds to that. It's at least the album that really kind of, it boosts up the year in a way in terms of it, because of everything. It's such a snarling sounding album that after this one, everyone else was probably trying to build upon what was being made with Coup. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm just gonna leave things. It's just this sound was a groundbreaking album in all the right ways. So, just a fantastic album from beginning to end. So, after Coup, despite again the band's rise in fame, just reading off of Wikipedia again, they were dropped by Capitol Records, which is unfortunate. But again, the thing is, shortly after the album's release, when apparently sales proved to be less than hoped for, and their stage shows, which again often featured Wendy O. Williams just destroying freaking tables, chairs, and other home furniture, and of course chainsaws, and of course let alone her sometimes almost being on stage, I guess pretty much barely close to being naked. I mean, she wore a lot of scantily clad stuff to where you would almost it would be considered a bit too much, at least for parents, I guess, at this time. So they were being considered a very dangerous band, and it did not give the band a very good look in some ways too. I mean, sometimes I say that bad publicity can be good publicity. Again, it's just the attention. And these guys, especially Wendy Williams, was all about basically attracting as much attention as possible, whether it was bad or good. They wanted all that attention to them, and they were drawing it to them. And it definitely made them a well-talked band, and it made Wendy Williams an attraction. But in the eyes of Capitol Records, it was a big no-no, and again, all of it just created a lot of controversy, and that's why Capitol basically dropped them. Well, I guess opening up for Kiss during this time period. I mean, I'm also kind of neglecting that during this time, of course, Wendy Williams did that split release with Lemmy of Motorhead, and of course the late Phil Taylor as well, for the Stand By Your Man album, which again cover, a Tammy Wynette cover, which of course also featured, I guess, a different version of their cover of No Class, and of course Motorhead doing a cover of Master Plan. So there. But again, to kind of backtrack myself here, I guess just opening for Kiss, I guess, gave Wendy O. Williams a second shot with at least a major label, I guess, in a way. Because, let me look real quick. Again, it was actually with Passport / Music for Nations, and of course with the very good help of Gene Simmons. He basically gave the band at least a second chance, and I guess for legal reasons, whatever, that I have yet to I didn't really look up much, but there was a whole lot of, I guess, from the controversy and everything, the Plasmatics basically changed their name to, of course, the Wendy Williams, again, named after the late singer. So they were given a second chance by Gene Simmons, and he pretty much produced the first album under the new Wendy Williams name, and in 1984, that's when we saw that her debut album, and of course it would continue on in 1986 with Commander of Chaos. After that, there would be a slight short resurgence in the Plasmatics, and they would release at least one final album, basically under the name, even though it would be Plasmatics, featuring Wendy Williams or Wendy Williams and the Plasmatics or something like that. And it would be called Maggots the Record, which is basically a concept story record that evolved around, I guess, a very science fiction horror story of just maggot worms, basically, that were, I guess, being breeded in whatever future or distant future, and was going around basically infecting everyone and killing everyone and so on. And that's what basically was the story. It was pretty much your typical kind of cheesy science fiction horror story or movie, whatever, but with at least some metal songs here and there. I loved it years ago, but these days, kind of listening back to it, it's pretty hokey now. So I've just have a much more different viewpoint on Maggots the record than I did much more years ago. I loved it early when I was much more younger, but now I don't know if I care much for it later now, which did with, I guess, more fresher eyes. So yeah, it's not considered considered to be one of their fining records. But that would be it for at least Wendy Williams and the Plasmatics. And sadly, by 1998, Wendy Williams would, very unfortunately, would commit suicide. She would, basically, it was suicide by a conflicted gunshot to, I think, the head, or maybe within the mouth. I don't know, but what was the I guess all the details about how she shot herself, but that would be her unfortunate demise. And yeah, it was April 6th of 1998, and she was only 48 years old. She was dealing with a lot of depression and everything. I mean, the fact, if you listen to a lot of the lyrics of Plasmatics, and especially Wendy Williams, yes, she was a very rude and crude female, but at the same time, she also had at least some very political opinions and everything. I mean, she was very much anti-meat in a way. She was, I don't know if you can say it was vegetarian or vegan. These days, she probably would, but she was very much anti-meat, and she process and everything. She just had very much different political views that at the time was not very well received. These days, she'd be looked as a hero now, and I think that's what it is. Like these days, she's probably now considered a hero, but when she was alive, she was what was considered a, I guess you could say a villain in the music world, but that's what kind of gave her personality. She had character to herself. Whether or not the stage performances were considered risque, but she just had at least a lot of personality, and I think it really showed a lot musically in the songs. And I think Coup de Da was easily one of those crowning achievements in just in her genre. She easily... It really proved to be her career-defining album, and just basically reshaped her, and she became, she was coined the Queen of Shock Rock in her day, but I think that album really pretty much made her a metal queen in a way, I guess more of a metal queen than Lee Aaron. I know, that might piss some people off. I know there's a lot of fans of Lee Aaron, but I don't know. I don't care much for her. I don't really, it's like a little too, just a little bit too different for me, and I guess you can say. Like, even though I like the poppy kind of stuff here and there, but I think her brand of hard rock, I think, was, not much for me. But I just really dislike the more snarling, more attitude-based kind of female singers. People have more oomph to, just have more, I guess, a lot more huevos to their tone than some more sticky, sweet-sounding female rock singers. But yeah, just great album in general. And the Plasmatics, Wendy Williams, every bit of that, just great stuff. So there it is, folks. There's my overall thoughts on Coup de Da from Plasmatics. Again, it's reached its 40th anniversary already at this point. It's 40 years this year in 2022. So if you were there when this album came out and you loved it, or let's say you disliked it, you can leave those comments in the comments section below. But if you at least have never heard Coup by Plasmatics, I think this is a pretty good album to really check out, especially for those that we want to kind of listen to albums that were kind of considered groundbreaking or were transitional albums or albums that really kind of broke genres in a way. You know, I really kind of really separated a bit of it. You know, it's just something that really changed the overall landscape in some way, shape, or form that really were considered very influential. So this is really one of those albums you definitely should check out. It really kind of helped define the sort of combination between punk and metal. This is one of those albums that I think really you need to at least check out. And of course, the fact of Wendy Williams in general and what she was. You'll get a lot of that on this album. This was really her defining album in many ways. So there it is. So that's it. I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrash saying I am out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.